Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to a beautiful Thursday, 10:12 on your radio dial. We're about to get started with the last part of the masterclass questions. Like I said, I did promise you guys a little view into the app. So let me first get into the iPad, and I already had the app up and running. So I'm going to check this out really quick and see if I can't get a tune out of this little bad boy. Um, it's actually fairly extensive. The app actually has been updated a few times since it came out. So there are some settings, there are some connection issues, there are things that people have. But the first thing is first in the software. You need to make sure that the software is ready to accept an external controller. So let's go into preferences. I'm sorry, let's go into control surfaces and we'll go into setup. And you can see here that I already have this. This one's got to go. Bye bye. I don't know why it's still here. But anyway, I have this one here. So first things first, obviously, is you get the app. The app is called Logic Control, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. No, Logic Remote. All right. So go onto the App Store on your iPhone or on your iPad and go get the Logic Remote app. All right. That's first thing, Logic Remote app. And once you have the Logic Remote app installed, please make sure that both your computer and your iPad or iPhone are on the same Wi-Fi connection. So this is going to work on Wi-Fi, not on Bluetooth. It's going to work on Wi-Fi. Here it is. So I'm in this Utool 2G, 5G, or 2G, 2G, or whatever network you have going on. Then make sure your iPad obviously is connected to the same one, which again, mine is. And now we're going to go into Logic Pro at the top, and we're going to go into control surfaces. And now you're going to have to start connecting and making the connection between the two. So you probably go into setup, and you probably wouldn't have one here like I do. Mine's already here and set up. So you would go into new, and then you would say scan all models, or you can check off automatic installation. At this point, the software would go out. It would look for any device like an iPad that's running Apple Remote or any other remote-based application. There is another one out there called vControl. So vControl is another application that connects to a number of different DAWs. In this case, my vControl is actually set up for Audition because I have a Pro Tools remote app. I have a Logic remote app. So the only remote app I didn't have on this laptop was for Audition. But I could change that over to Logic Pro. And I know you guys aren't seeing this, so maybe, just maybe, we can do this. Let's see how this works out. Nope, we're going to stop share. That's not really working out all that well. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. How's that look? Doesn't look great. I'll tell you that. Doesn't look great. But this is, by the way, this is vControl. Let's see. Is that better? There we go. That's better. So yeah. So at this point, Logic Remote would be your Logic application. That's this guy here, right? And I'll quit out of this for a second so you can see the other ones. PT1 Control is for Pro Tools. So that's the Pro Tools app. And then vControl is a general controller for software. So right now, I'm going to go into the settings. You can see it pop up there. I know this is not the best way of showing it. And then we're going to go into connection, and you'll go find the connection. And then your DAW, which is your digital audio workstation. They have all of them listed here on the side from Audition and Cubase, Final Cut, Live, Mackie Control, Media Composer, Pro Tools, Reaper, Reason, Sonar, Studio One. So this one is a general one. And then, of course, there's the ability to update this. I don't know what my latest update is, 1913. I don't know if that's the most recent, but I can always go in and try to figure that out later. So again, my DAW would be Logic Pro, and right, that's what I would choose. And then I'd have to establish a connection. At this point, my connection is not really there. So it does have a check mark, though. I don't know if you can see that. It's over there. So I'm wondering if this will actually allow me to get in there and see it. Oh, there we go. And no, I don't see anything yet. It might take a minute to establish it. There's some release notes. I didn't want that. No, it's not really connecting in this. It would take me a little bit. I don't want to bore you with the details of how to establish a full connection on that one. So what I'm going to use is a specific Pro Tools one. I'm sorry, a specific Logic one. And that one works very, very well. Like I said, immediately when you get Logic here in the software, able to go out and scan for devices, it will pick it up. It makes a really good one-to-one connection. If you didn't have it here for your phone or for your iPad, then of course you're going to go into install, and then you're going to go find your controller. In this case, I would probably look for a Apple controller. So we do have Apple down here somewhere, and there it is right there. Apple Remote, Apple Remote, Apple Remote. And so these are what's installed on my phone and what's installed on my iPad. You would select which one it is. In this case, it'd be iPad Pro. And then once you add it, it would now be in this list here. Now you can go and open the software on the iPad, and all of a sudden, magically, the entire control surface is there. Basically, what you're given is a view into the mixer. And it becomes an external controller. So if you can see this, right, I'm going to actually move the fader on the iPad. So here's my mouse. I'm not going to touch my mouse. I'm going to move the fader on my iPad, and then you can see the fader in the controller works. That's pretty cool, right? So this is now me touching my iPad back and forth and up and down. I could change pan. I can solo it. I can mute it. I can take on and off the recording button. There is the ability to add MIDI effects. I can see the I/O in this. I can see audio effects. So if I click on my EQ, I actually can see my EQ in my iPad. And that's kind of cool. And this one I'll show you. So there it is. There's my EQ. It's hard to tell with the reflection. Stupid thing. But yeah, you can see it. It's right there. Whee! Look at me. See, there's the EQ. Hey, look at that. So that's actually really cool. I do like that idea of being able to see a touchscreen EQ. Let's see how it looks in the software when I touch it. So I'm going to open up my own EQ, and then I'm going to move parameters. This is on my iPad now. I'm moving parameters. That's awesome. This is one of the reasons why I really do like the way Logic integrated this into its software. It's very, very, very cool. I'm going to back out of that. I can also look at my compressor in here. Now, the compressor doesn't look as visual as like it does in the software. So the compressor in the software looks like this. But if I stop share for a moment and show you this, so it looks just like the parameters. All you're seeing is the parameters here in the compressor, right? So that's, again, something that, makes a lot of sense for a application on a iPad. But it makes more sense here because then you have all the parameters. You can choose from your different types of compressors and your parameters for each one. So that's pretty cool. I can change my sends as well. So if everyone want to key in on bus 4 and 5 here, I can change the amount on my iPad just doing this. See that? Pretty cool. And then my pan and volume, which is down here, and just overall volume. So lots of different ways you can manipulate the screen. The one thing that you can't do is view the edit window on your iPad. So this is what makes this kind of cool, because what I can do right now, and you can't see me, but what I'm doing is I have my mixer up on my iPad and I just put it off to the right of my screen. And now I don't even have to bring up my mixer in this window. I can do my editing. Right? And then if I wanted to change some sort of volume without having to go into the mixer on the screen here, I could just do it here on my iPad. So I just bring these guys up a little bit, and those are my harmonies. So that's what makes this app really cool. It actually becomes like a second screen to the rest of my project. Yeah, see my smooth harmonies now. I spent a little time after the class yesterday really getting those pitched harmonies using flex pitch sounding pretty cool. And, they just go along a scale. If you think of it in terms of the scale of C, I think it was C major, right? So each of these notes is in that scale. So there's an E, there's a B, and there's a G. And then this one is G, G, E. And then this one is E, C, G. And then this is how that sounded. Right? They're very cool. That was me doing flex pitch yesterday and just spending a little more time making sure I had the scales right when I was doing the harmonies of the second and third track. But then, like I said, I'm really have this cool interface where I can take these two faders and you can see them pulling down right here in the track. This is me touching my iPad right now on a second screen next to my other screen. So I have some, and probably I put it on my left side because my hand is on the mouse on the right side. And now I have this external controller on the left side. As I play it back, I can actually affect things. Cool, right? Also with that, so let's get into this. I can actually create automation, right? So if I put these, I put these two tracks into write mode. So now when I push play, I can actually write automation, I believe. Let's see how that works. I can. Look at that. It's magical. I mean, it's a lot of little dots. Every little movement of my finger made its own little node. But yeah, that was me creating automation with my external touchscreen device. And I could still do it here. See, at the very last parameter, I could still move it up and down with my two fingers. I'm using two fingers on the touchscreen. So this actually was the inspiration for the Raven from Steven Slate. So this has been out for a long time. This is not new technology on the iPad. So Steven Slate said, what if the computer was just the iPad where you can interact with now even the edit window, the mix window, the plugin windows? That is what's limited on the iPad app, but it's certainly not limited on a Raven system. So he took that same concept and built two touchscreens side by side to now be the full version of your application and all the touchscreen gestures and all that other good stuff that he built in as well. But it was the inspiration. This is where it all started. That there was this application on an iPad that allowed you to do things in real time, like create automation and move faders and panning, and even, like I said, we can add MIDI effects and audio effects and everything. We could basically see the whole mixer on my iPad. So it's a very, very, and it's the same controller protocol, by the way, too. It's using proprietary software and stuff built into Logic to do those same types of moves. The controller and data goes into the software and controls certain parts of it. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm ecstatic about this. I do use this often. I just didn't use it here at home all that much. I use it more in a recording studio. It actually could be your third screen, right? Do you really need to have the mixer now in the second window? No, you can have the edit windows spread across the entire two windows, giving you this huge amount of real estate for editing, and have an iPad sitting on a mount being your mixer. Awesome. Freaking awesome. I love it. And Pro Tools does the same thing. Pro Tools application, maybe I'll jump into that tomorrow when we do some mastering, or Wednesday. I'm sorry, not tomorrow. When we do Pro Tools mastering on Tuesday, I'll open up the application for Pro Tools and we can show you that it does pretty much the same thing back and forth. So very, very cool stuff. And I wanted, again, to just make sure you knew that that was a possibility, knew that that was something that could be done, and saw how cool Logic does this with its control surfaces. One of the things I really do like about Logic is its integration with so many different brands and applications and third-party stuff. This isn't a third-party build, by the way. Logic Remote is from Apple. So if you get it for your phone or if you get it for your iPad, you're going to have a lot of fun with Logic in front of you using that as a connection. Again, just to connect it, you need to have both on the same Wi-Fi. And then you go to Logic Pro, control surfaces, set up, and then you can go ahead and set up your control surface. This is a MIDI controller, so don't get this mixed up. This is a MIDI controller for MIDI. Whereas if you go to Control Surfaces Setup, this is where you're going to find that external wireless controller options. Yeah, I just turned it off. That's why it has the thing on there, if anyone was wondering. I still don't know why this is here. I don't know why it's there. And it's really starting to annoy me that I put that there last week. And I do not want it here anymore. I'm getting tired of it sitting there. Recording light. Is there a delete thing here? No, there is not. I mean, I did delete it, but it doesn't go away. Very frustrating. Anyway, I'll figure that out. That'll take up 20 minutes of my time later after class. All right, let's get into some more questions because that was a great one. And like I said, I've been kind of treading water and skating around it for a couple of days now. But now that I had it all set up, I briefly showed you yesterday, and then I want to get into it today on how to get the whole system running. Let's see here. So what's the best space to record vocals? Interesting. Let's take a look. Let's go online really quick and just take a look at acoustic recording spaces. Easy, right? We're just using, I know I didn't spell it right. We're just using keywords, right? Acoustic recording spaces. So let's talk about, what it is to have a good acoustic space. Going back to our acoustic lessons earlier in the year, studios obviously are going to have some sort of acoustic treatment in them for the playback, for the output. But what about the recording space? So this is a typical recording space that, well done, obviously. They have some cool artwork. But behind each guitar is these dense, thick foam pads. We know them as sound absorption. They will have an acoustic property to them, letting us know if they're going to reduce high frequencies, mid frequencies, or low frequencies. What we can't see is kind of what's on this wall here, but we do see other things like a very reflective surface in sliding glass, some diffusion over here. I know it's hard to see, but it looks like there's diffusion on the doors to cut down that reflection. You do notice that there is a bunch of exposed wood flooring, which is very reflective, and it seems like a very tall room. But then they have carpet here and a little carpet underneath this guy and maybe some carpet over here under the drums. So they have a little bit of things that are going to allow it to break up the space. Likewise, you have something like this where you see a ton of treatment on the wall back here. The glass is angled to cut down on standing waves. The acoustic treatment in the ceiling to not let sound come up here and get trapped and then come back down to the microphones on the drums later. The drums themselves purposely have a carpet under them, not because so much of acoustics, but more because to keep the drums staying where they are without damaging the floor. Huge reflective space here on the wood flooring. Some great properties. Things are going to sound different here than they might sound in other spaces. So another look at a drum room. Again, heavy acoustics on the ceiling, on the walls, a little bit of openness on the wood floor, and then a carpet here to kind of cut down on some of those standing waves. There's a bunch of these that look like drum rooms, but understand that they're purposely placing these things on the wall for certain reasons. Here's a great example. It looks like the walls are all angled, right? These are all angled walls. If you look at the ceiling, these tiles have diffusion in them, and the ones that have lights in them, and they're all off at different angles. This is, the ability to change the reflection angle. But the floor is untreated, complete wood floor, very reflective. So why would they do that? Well, because this piano that's in here, this recording space that's in this room, needs to have some room to breathe. A piano shouldn't be, very, very tight, dry signal. It should have room to breathe. So again, just one of the answers I would say is what's the best space to record vocals? It's going to depend on what type of vocals you're doing. If you want something big and boisterous that's going to really fill a room, you have someone who's really loud, has a really loud voice, I think that definitely would help. Let's just be more specific and write acoustic vocal recording spaces. And then things change a little bit. We know we can record in a little bit of a vocal booth, this little portable isolation room. We've talked about adding an SE-X1 reflection filter or having the SE-X1 in a reflection filter like these guys are. Not necessary if that's not what you're looking for. There are people that build their own vocal booths. because sometimes recording tight vocals, which means no reflectivity, no major standing waves, just want tight vocals, and we'll do all the vocal processing in post-production in the software. That's completely, to me, a preference to the engineer. So the engineer is going to make that call, and they're going to have a space for that. Now, I've seen plenty of people record vocals in a huge room like this, all right, because of the properties of that space enhance the vocalist's voice. So that's what you're looking to do. You got to know your vocalist first. You got to know how that person sounds, how they sing. If they're singing very slow, a big room's not going to benefit them. You might want a tight room so you can really increase the volume of the microphone without capturing a lot of background sound. Something like this, it's not an acoustic barrier around this guy. He's singing into a space that doesn't look like it's heavily treated with acoustic foam or any acoustic treatment. And then you have this guy who's doing voiceover work, it looks like. So you put a reflection filter on there. Again, it's going to depend on what you're recording and how you're doing it. A lot of spaces this one is just over the top, ridiculous voiceover stuff that this person goes into this room and you could probably whisper and capture it perfectly because there's no standing waves. There's no room sound. It's completely dead through and through. So that, again, all depends on a preference from the recording engineer. And it also depends on the genre, depends on how you're recording, depends on the vocalist. So that is something that I would say I would defer that off to an engineer depending on what you're doing. All right, so let's say you're just singing. You're singing in your bedroom. How does it sound? Listen, if it sounds good and you like the way your voice reverberates in that space, the way it reflects and stays in that room and gives it that airy feeling that really enhances your voice, that's your space. And if you find like your room is very detrimental, you're not getting the exact signal you're looking for, then there's options. You can change your mic. You can change and get a reflection filter. You can have a vocal booth. You can go ahead and make some sort of makeshift vocal booth in your closet. There's answers all over the place for that specific question. I don't want to give you a best place is my bathroom. No, it could be. Depends on what you're doing. Maybe the bathroom gives it a nice natural reverberation. I don't know. But what you do know and what you should know, that's what I wanted to say, is how these spaces sound and how your voice or someone else's voice is going to react. Knowing basic audio sound information. How does sound travel? How does it bounce? What's the room made of? What's the acoustic properties? What is the person doing? Singing, speaking, rapping, yelling, screaming, whatever it is. And then how does this space enhance or detract from that performance? Those, again, I can't give you a flat answer. I can give you better what space does what acoustic properties are, what foam does, what acoustic energy can be absorbed versus diffused, positioning of that stuff. We've watched those videos on the Francis Buckley making over people's studio, called Studio Rescue, by the way, if you ever want to watch more of those. So a basic knowledge. That knowledge then has to be applied to the situation. It's applied. Okay? So there's your answer for that question. I like it a lot. How do I know if I have to adjust a certain volume or automation? Well, let's go back to what I just said. I've given you some basic core structural information. You need to have the input, the recording session, be recorded well. Starts with a good recording. Then you can start looking at where it sits in the mix. Is this a vocal track that needs to stand out? How do I make it stand out? Well, you add EQ compression to start and see if you can find a pocket for those vocals to sit in nicely. A space for them to not have to be boosted beyond compare, but a space for them to sit so they do have a major role in the mix. And so automation and volume start with a good recording. If I have a good recording, I can always bring the volume down. If I have a bad recording and it's super low, there's really no amount of magic that can recover that bad recording. Can I boost it with a fader? Yeah. Can I overdo compression? Yeah. Did it change the performance? The answer is yeah. So you really have to be careful on how you're attacking these elements. Again, start at the beginning, good recording to start, EQ and compression, find a space for your vocals. If there's no space, pull some tracks down and make some space for them. Then once I have it there and I'm happy in general with where I am with that particular performance, now it's about, we were saying automation or even fades, right? So in our project here, I found that if I did not put a fade at the front, I was getting this pop because I cut in the middle of a waveform and it popped in. Likewise, on the back end, as it trailed off, it was a little rough. It kind of just cut off abruptly. So I added in these nice smooth fades. Did I have to use fades? The answer is no. I could use automation. So in automation mode, as we know, we can actually just add those fades and it looks something like that, right? That technically is a fade in, and then I can add a fade out. So I can just do this. Now, if I want to take this and change it, well, now I need a different tool to bend it like this curve is here. This fade that's here is not what's here. This is a very linear fade out. I want it to be more curvatured. So there is a tool for that, and it's called automation. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Automation curve tool. So now I can take that and shape it just like that fade. This one was very linear anyway, but I can just bend it to show you. And then I can bring it in, and now it has a very similar effect to the fades that were there before. Kind of put it at the same start time, same end time, and there we go. It's pretty much the same exact fade that I had with the fade tool, now I have with automation. How do you know when to use it? Use your ears. Use your ears. If your volume on your track isn't good by the time you get to automation processing, then you did something wrong going back. So either the recording was wrong, your EQ and compression settings were wrong. At this point, I'm really only creating automation to highlight things, to be like a utility, to do your fade outs, to do your fade ins, to kind of accent a certain area of the song. So if I were to create my little boost here, this is something that I couldn't do with just a fader or a fade tool. This is something I would have to do with volume. Or if I wanted to carve out a space for another part of the song to come through a little bit, right? This is what I meant by carving out space for it. I have to create an actual automation area here. So again, looking at, the ways to manipulate automation, there has to be a purpose for your automation. You're not just doing automation to boost your signal. You're not just writing this automation so I can do that. That's not right. That's the same as taking your fader and putting it all the way to the top. And we know that's not proper etiquette. Why did you do that? Well, because you didn't have enough volume. Why don't you have enough volume? Well, again, let's go back to the beginning. You didn't record it right. EQ and compression settings might be wrong. Your mix of the other tracks could be way too loud. Again, while I'm recording, while I'm processing, while I'm playing back and doing my editing, I am constantly looking at my VU meters, constantly looking at the master track VU meter to see my overall volume. If I do have a sub mix, which I did have here, my vocal sub, remember, I'm going to take a look at that to kind of simplify the process, to collect all the vocal tracks into one space. So as a collection, I can turn them up or down. It also allows me then to, like, let's say these are 3 other subs, let's say drums, guitar, vocals. I can pull those down a little bit instead of pushing the vocal sub up. I would push these down just a little bit so it allows the vocals to be louder in the mix. And why do we group them all together? Well, because it's much easier to touch 3 faders than to touch 15 to 20 faders, which is what's feeding these 3 faders. And temporary grouping allows you very quick movements in that. And so since I pulled this down anywhere between 2.9 and 3.5 decibels, now the vocals are going to sit much louder in the mix. And that's, again, what my goal was, and to achieve a better sounding mix. It wasn't through automation. It wasn't through track fader pushes. It was through the recording process from the beginning, the EQ and compression, the small mixes I create, then blending in new sound along the way, piece by piece by piece, and building a mix. You're going to hear engineers talk and speak about how they build the mix from the very beginning, whatever they choose to start with, till they get their final master track the way they want it. And it does. It takes time to build it from piece to piece to piece. Once you do it a few times, once you get used to that process, it actually just becomes second nature. You just do it that way. And you don't think about it. And you don't spend as much time doing it because you know there's certain things you need to do here, certain things you need to do there. You know, on track 1, it sounded like this. So on track 5, this is how I achieve that. And it will take less time moving forward. But in the initial stages of where you start as being entry-level engineers at this point, you need to really focus on each step very carefully. Avoid the pitfalls of doing what people online are doing that weren't trained properly, that are just picking this up as they go. And they found, hey, I could just, they want louder vocals, boom, louder vocals. Down the road, that might have worked in that moment, but I'll tell you one thing, down the road, that's not something they can do all the time. It might be very, very a surprise, very, very a coincidence that worked. But for the most part, that's not the proper way, a proper training way to increase volume and energy. So let's go back to our questions here. I hope I answered that fully. How do I know if I have a certain volume automation? Again, it depends on how you listen, how you look, how you do, and how you go about your process. Are there other compression plugins that are popular? Oh, compression plugins that are popular. Banco Popular. Yes, there are some that are popular. I have a few here in software. I'm just plugging in my iLok really quick so I can access my third-party plugins. Let's go into one. Let's dump this guy out of here. He is the standard compressor that we've been using, and let's use a third-party compressor. Let's see what I got here. So I'll go into my audio units. Basically, these are third-party plugins from IK Multimedia, iZotope, McDSP, Native Instruments, Slate, Sound Toys, and Waves. So Slate has a cool one. Maybe I'll look at that in a moment. Let's see what Native Instruments has for me in regards to a compressor. The solid bus compressor, that'd be a bus compressor. I don't know if I want to use that. The VC, let's see. Look at this guy. So this is a compressor. I like this one. I've used this one before. I don't know if I used the 160. I might use the one below that. So, obviously you have your third-party compressor that has very similar parameters that our compressors do. So you have your high pass, you have some gain, you have the threshold, basically the line in the sand that anything that goes over that particular setting will start to get compressed. And then you have your quote-unquote ratio. So leading up to about 10-1, you're in a compressor. Once you hit 10-1 and going over, you're in a limiter. And then your makeup gain here. And then your wet and dry mix here. You actually have a cool little meter here that shows you your volume. And you can actually view it on the way in or on the way out. So again, just looking at that, I don't think there's any presets. Oh, there's a couple. So there's a vocal one right here. So there you go. There's your vocal compressor. So I don't know if you can hear that. And now it's feeding into this guy. So check 1, 2, hey. And you can see that the meter actually is pushing back. So as I get louder, this is pulling back and trying to keep my vocals consistent. Again, compressors reduce the dynamic range. So as I get louder, it draws it back. It grabs it and pulls it way back. So my vocals sound consistent throughout. And then in turn, this could allow me to increase the volume of the track as a whole instead of increasing and automating here and there. By the way, your presets are also here if you're looking for something. Smasher. Ooh, I'm getting some heavy feedback from this bad boy because this is a very, very high compression setting. You can see that the threshold is super low. The compression's at 16:1, and the output is really cranked up. And you can see now my meter really pushing back to kind of get my vocals to stay as consistent as possible. So that's one of the other ones I was using. So this was what I say this was. This was Native Instruments, right? Let me turn this off for a second. There we go. What other ones have I used? McDSP has a compressor bank. I've used the 202. This one's not bad. Again, same settings that you're going to see in a standard compressor. Your threshold, the knee. This has a little more attack release information. Are there presets here? I don't remember. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there is. There we go. Vocal with high pass filter and bite, and vocal with high pass filter and resonation, just with high pass filter, or vocal with high pass. And there we go. So let's see how that controls things here. There we go. A little check 1, 2. Again, here comes the compressor pushing in. So this is showing you the amount of reduction happening. This is the input level. This is the output level. So you can see that there is a reduction in volume. Probably less as I talk really slow. But then as I get loud, you can see the difference is big. I can always change the output to match. And you can see as I do that, that the softers become a little louder and the louders become pretty even. So again, the goal is to create a more balanced vocal track or a balanced track in volume. So it is basically reducing the dynamic range. What else do we have here? What else can we use? iZotope has a couple of cool things in here. I really want to talk more about iZotope when we get into mastering. I use it more for mastering and sound cleanup. So the RX package is for sound cleanup, and the Ozone package is for mastering for me. People use it for individual plugins. I do not. IK Media only has the guitar. Let's look at the virtual rack. Oh, Steven Slate, show me the money. So what Steven Slate has done as opposed to what we talked about previously to using the external Logic remote and then his ability to have the Raven system act very similarly. Steven Slate also took a really large amount of time to develop a software package that would mimic hardware. And we did talk about hardware this week, talking about rack units when we were dealing with signal flow. So again, the signal comes from my mic, it goes in my interface, it converts over to digital, it goes in my computer, it hits the track and gets recorded on the track, and then it gets processed. So if I didn't put anything in line from mic to software, then the signal going into the software is going to be what's coming into the mic and what's coming into the interface. The signal on the way out that you could be monitoring with a pair of headphones could have processing on it, plugins, buses that have sends, all sorts of stuff. So Steven Slate, actually, I believe Steven Slate Drums was the first software plugin she developed. And then he came out with a line of these plugins, which are models of real types of compressors and reverb units and mic pre's and EQs. So that's exactly what this is. This is a suite, a plugin suite, where I can now add different types of plugins into the signal chain. I can add and hide and reveal and add more or less to it. So this first one here, it looks like it's just an EQ, right? We got high frequencies, high mids, lows, low mids and lows, and then overall. Or a filter, which we can actually use to create high pass and low pass filters. This one is a British EQ modeled after, I think it was the Pulson. If it's not the Pulson, then it's a different EQ, whatever. It looks great, right? And it's the same thing. It's high, mids, lows, and then some roll-offs on the front end and back end of the signal chain. Let's insert this guy right here. So this says it's an FG116 dynamic. It's an authentic creation of the classic American FET compressor. Let's dump that in line. All right. And let's get rid of these EQs because we already have EQ on this track. So I put this in line and now I have my settings. Again, input and output. I have my ratios which are just buttons. So 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1. I got my attack and release settings here. I have my mix and my blend. So this is a standard compressor that goes in line. There's a bunch of other types. Like this guy here is for the VCAs. This guy here is an emulation of one of the most famous preamps in the industry. So that's a preamp, not a compressor. The FG is another pre. These are EQs we saw before. The Monster. Oh, listen, the Monster is in a dynamic explosive compressor. Let's check this guy out. Let's put that in there. And you can see already in the background, my voice got really loud. That's because the Monster is a monster. And actually some presets in the Monster, by the way. Each one of these has its own channel strip presets. We can make it a vocal warm. So this actually sounds really good right now. I know you guys can't hear the feedback loop. If I crank it up here, would be really loud. But yeah, this is really doing a great job on my vocals, clamping down, keeping everything consistent, excuse me, from start to finish. What other ones do I have here are, so these guys I don't own. So these guys you have to buy into. So Air EQ, Air Earth. What's Air Earth? Air Earth, deep solid subs. So cool. Here's another EQ. This is a lift, curves, boost, and blah, blah, blah. All right, so then it gets into, let me get rid of this for a second. Check. There we go. Now it's starting to get into the mics. So this also becomes a mic modeler. So what I can do is I can utilize the mic that I own, the thing that I'm using right now, and I can actually set it up so it models and will sound like classic instruments. In this case, this is a SM57, right? Doesn't it look just like an SM57? And this one is probably the Neumann U87 or U62, whatever it is. There's some more plugins down here. This is a FET compressor. This is probably a vintage compressor. Yep, vintage FET. This looks like an EQ to me. American equalizers. Yep. Probably modeled after a SL. Let's see what else we got here. Hollywood. So these are all ones we don't own, but we will own, or actually we should own at this point. We bought into this software already. I just don't have it here at home with me. Emulates the summing amp characteristics of each console. That's pretty cool. I want to mess with that. Can't wait till these licenses become unlocked for me. But there's another way of adding compression to your signal. All right, let's dump this. There we go. All right, what else is there in third-party plugins? Yeah, Apple has some of their own. These are ones that stem from other Apple programs like Final Cut Pro. What else we got here? We did talk about Isotope, DSP when we went through that. Slate Sound Toys has a couple, but they don't call them compressors. I forget which one's the compressor though. I can go back through there and look. And then obviously, I mean, I use Waves a lot. This is not, it's not installed on this laptop. So I'm not quite sure why in the heck it's doing this. The Waves plugin is not set up on this one, unfortunately. So I have here at my house a ridiculous amount of Waves plugins. I have something like 3,000 Wave plugins on my home computer because Waves is what I would use since I was, back in college. Great third-party plugins. I think I had the Mercury bundle that I was able to get from my buddy. But yeah, there's a lot of other plugins out there. The popular ones are some of the ones I showed you. But then again, there's a million other plugins. For instance, I got a buddy who actually is right now beta testing his college professor's plugin package that he's developing. So, you can come out with your own. If you're a decent programmer, you can basically build your own plugin package and model it after things that are already in the field, or just do it to what you like. Maybe you spend a lot of years adjusting software and creating these presets, and you could just program those presets into your own package. It'd be awesome. All right. We'll go on to the next question because that's a lot about plugins. What does it really mean to flatten a performance and what does it do to a track? Okay, sure. So this was a track stack. And to flatten the performance, we're going to go flatten. And then it takes all of the pieces that you had from each take and it flattens it out to one track. What does it do to the track? Well, it takes it from not being a track stack to being a track stack. And I think that's where you were going with this. I'm not 100% sure of the direction of the question. I wish it was a little more detailed. But when I hear flatten the track, I would probably say if you were in a track stack, that would be one way to flatten. Another way to flatten a track, so this is interesting, is kind of what we did up here to the Baby Grand when we turned MIDI into audio and made sure that all of the bus and external plugin information, the EQ, the compressor, the tape delay, all of that stuff turned into or blended or mixed down to the audio track. So if I were to right click on this, there is not the flatten option that you would find when we were doing track stacks. So something like a bounce in place would be a good quote unquote flattening. Exporting it to audio file would work. We could flatten the automation into it too. But basically what we're talking about is taking what's there as it sounds to your ears through your headphones, through your speakers, and turning it into just a plain old audio file that wouldn't need any additional plugin work because all the plugin work was done. So we're flattening down, we're reducing all of the processing in order to get it to where it needs to be and to simplifying all the MIDI notes and the controller data and the plugin work and the busing and basically get an exact copy of that flattened down to what it is. If you want to put it in terms of images, it's the same way we work with Photoshop, by the way, that we flatten the image. So I'll just show you this really quick. It'll take 2 seconds. I don't know if I probably have a million projects sitting in here that we can use, but I'll just start a new one. Yeah, look at all this. Holy cow. So if I were just create just a blank space, right? And you think about it this way, this is a layer, right? Let's call this a track, right? This is track 1. And then I put track 2 with some text that says, hello there, or hello there, right? So this is track 2. And this is the same concept. We're building and we're layering things. So when there's layers, track 1, track 2 on each other, there's the ability to flatten those layers, to combine them and create one. So if I were to just go ahead and go to my little menu button here, I can go down to flatten image and you'll see it combine the two into one image. I can't go back now in and take hello away. I could before. Before I could just do this, hello. But now, since it's flattened, hold on. Since I go to flatten, I basically flatten the image. It just gave me one image that I cannot manipulate or change. Even if I unlock it, I only can move it together. So everything now blends together. It's one. That's exactly the same concept here in software for audio. You have multiple layers or multiple things built on each other. In this case, the piano with the MIDI and the controller and the plugin information is all blended together, but I can actually separate it out still. But once I flatten it, I'm combining everything down to create a final masterpiece, let's say. So cool. Cool. I like that. Flattening. Last question of the week. Oh, yeah. Here we go. How do you draw in automation lines to help a track? Well, I think we already covered that. But just to answer your question, anonymous person, again, you have to go into automation mode, which we've done several times now throughout the week. Where are all my automation? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Where is it all? I'm going to reduce this track stack. We'll go back into automation. Here's automation. I hit A, and there's my automation, right? And we talked about creating your nodes and then using the tools like the line tool, which is what your normal is, but then you have a curve tool, which you actually can create the same types of curves that you can do with fades. And you can also do it within the track too, you know. I mean, it's not like you just have to use it on an edge. If I create a node and then I go into my curve tool, so now I can shape and blend. It's hard to see. Sorry. No, go away. I can move this like that. And there you go. There's your curve that we were looking for. I can shape that any which way I want, right? This way, that way, S curve, X curve, linear curve, slow curve. So those are just ways to manipulate automation information once you have it written. But to get there, obviously, you have to push A. Then you have to use the right tool. So you start with the pointer tool to create your nodes. You make your moves, and then you can use the curve tool to select and create the curve, the desired curve of how you want that shape to be of the automation. And again, we're doing this because it's probably more customized than doing it as a fade. Plus, you can do it in the middle of a track. You couldn't do these fades in the middle of a track. So you'd have to actually create your, you know, your fade nodes here. And then I can't use the fade tool to bend these. I can't use the fade tool to create anything there. But with the automation curve tool and the automation mode, I can actually do some bending here and shaping of automation lines. So to answer your question, how do you draw in the automation to help the track? Well, I don't know about helping the track, but definitely has something to do with getting a result you're looking for. That's really the key here of automation is how do I get this result? A, B, C. What do I need to do? So there you go. There you have it. Do I have any questions pertaining to the information for today? We went over a lot of stuff. Obviously, the iPad stuff, the compressor, external plugins, automation curve tools, lots of topics. So all of these, I'm going to update the Google Classroom stream with the new questions document. And again, you can go in and watch the videos on our YouTube channel and write down information each day about what we did. If you are not doing it now, you just have your phone propped up in your room and you're just kind of walking around the room and going about your day, or have your, what you basically probably do is this is how I see it. And you don't have to correct me if I'm wrong. Just know that I was wrong. But you just have your laptop or your phone or your iPad open, and then you have something else going on in the room. You're really not paying attention. So my point is, if you are doing what you probably should be doing, and that's watching the lesson and making notes along the way, then go back to the YouTube channel with those questions and write down the answers to those questions, because then you have it in front of you when you take the test, and you shouldn't be failing the test when there are questions on there that we've already done from previous tests, and the fact that I'm telling you to do what I'm telling you to do. I mean, come on. Anyway, it's 11:05. I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, everyone get out there, enjoy themselves today. But at one point, you need to lock yourself down and get the work done. I would, like I said, the progress reports are going to have to be sent out Friday, which then probably will hit your homeschools Monday or Tuesday, which then will mean phone calls will come by the end of the week, and then you'll have to deal with it. So I'll see everybody tomorrow at 10 a.m. to answer any of the questions you want to review for the test. So develop some questions that you want to review for the test tomorrow, and I'll go over them in the first 20 minutes. Again, no project due tomorrow. Just do all your past projects, and the test will be available on the Google Classroom at 10:20 tomorrow. Again, appreciate all your time and effort. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Holla!